To say that Warhammer 40k is unique is like saying the sun is bright. Truly, there is no setting that combines the craziness of sci-fi, the wonder of fantasy, and all wrapped in a beautiful blanket of high gothic architecture. There is no one that does grim dark, just like good old Warhammer 40k. And a big part of the reason as to why it's so unique are none other than the poster boys themselves, the Space Marines. For the Space Marines are often called the epitome of 40k. For as long as 40k has been 40k, Space Marines have been in the mix. And it's no small wonder as to why so many people absolutely love these guys. But yet, why? Why is it that these are the most beloved faction in all the setting? Why some of the most beloved characters come from the Space Marines and their legions? In short, why do people love Space Marines so much? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna find that out in today's video. So strap in and buckle up, and let's get cracking on with today's video. Real quick, before this video begins, I want to give a massive shout out to an awesome project made by a couple of even more awesome dudes. And that is the Horus Heresy campaign 1/18th scale. This absolute crazy shenaniganery was created by King Fluff, the Lead Will Walk the Earth, and Brian Jenkins, aka Mr. Templar Crusade 01. And these fellas had the ideas like, you know what would be cool? If we could take the Joy Toy Space Marines, yeah, those action figures, and play a board game with them. And lo and behold, these mad lads actually figured out how to do it. And the best part is, they made it so you don't gotta sell a kidney to afford to play it. The rules are great, everything is wonderful, it's awesome, and it's a super chill game, beer and pretzels as the old man Brian said. I love this, I adore this. So if you want to figure out how to play 1/18th scale Warhammer 40k Marine game with you and your best mates, all you need to do is click the link down below and it'll take you over to your Facebook. It has the rules, everything, and all the nonsense you need. They have some special 3D printed stuff, and they even have a discount code by LT Cave, who actually agreed to sponsor them. Go check them out. They get the Ranger seal of approval. Full disclosure, this isn't sponsored or anything, I just think Brian's a really cool guy. The origins of Warhammer 40k began all the way back in 1987. Where Games Workshop, a little company known for making miniatures, particularly for Lord of the Rings and other fantasy IPs, would release a little something called Rogue Trader. And little did they know they would create a saga nearly 40 years in the making. For Rogue Trader was the first time we ever got introduced not only to the world of Warhammer 40k, but the Space Marines as well, with the first canon appearance of any Space Marine being the Crimson Fists. And here we would learn everything there is to know about this crazy setting. But rather than me just retelling you, how about we get it straight from the horse's mouth? Taken from Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, 1987. The Legiones Astartes is the official title of the warrior organization, more commonly known as the Space Marines. It is the most powerful and most feared fighting arm in the Imperium. Most of its troopers are recruited from the Pharaoh planets, where traditional warrior castes compete for the honor of becoming a warrior of the gods. Because the Pharaoh planets are rough, primitive, and untamed, the inhabitants make excellent fighting material. For true aggression and psychotic instinct, however, few recruits can best the murderous followers of the city scum that roam the darkest pits of the Hive Worlds. Driven to extremes of insanity by the colossal pressures of Hive World living, these merciless killers are usually ignored by the authorities. Indeed, their warrens are so vast, it would be impractical to eradicate them completely. They make ideal Space Marines, and whole gangs of city scum are sometimes hunted and captured for this purpose. Some recruits may come from the civilized areas of the Imperium, but not very many. Young recruits are subjected to many hours of intensive training and indoctrination, leading to physical and mental changes. Their bodies are toughened by biochem, and their resolve is hardened by psychosurgery. A special black plastic carapace is merged with their natural flesh, forming a sort of identity tag, as well as permanent protection. All this preparation is intended to turn the prospective Marine into a disciplined killer, or at least a controllable one. The Space Marines differ from the ordinary army in many respects. Its organizational base and mode of operation are completely different. The basic unit, called a chapter, is led by its own Imperial commander. Each chapter is like a small army in itself. Although it contains only 1,000 fighting Marines, the chapter has the fighting potential of many times that number of ordinary troops. Chapters have their own uniforms, transport, non-combatant staff, etc., and are fully capable of traveling to their destination using their own spacecraft. Because they are mobile, the Space Marines are usually the first troops to arrive at a scene of conflict, and they are used to mount strikes, raids, and surprise attacks. Their reputation for savage ferocity and complete lack of mercy has earned them the nickname Angels of Death. Each chapter has a home base, which may be an Imperial planet, or possibly a deserted moon or asteroid. Some chapters go to great lengths to keep the location of their home base a secret, whilst others are quite open. The preferred location is an Imperial planet, where the chapter's leader will usually make a bargain with the planet's governor, paying a tithe in return for being allowed to build and occupy their own fortresses. Governors often appreciate having a marine chapter right on their doorstep. It certainly discourages unwelcome visitors. So right from the get-go, we can see that the original Space Marine of 40k is very different to the modern day guy. Yet there are some things that are still very much the same. The original Space Marines were ordinary men. Well, I say ordinary. They were specifically high-the-gang scum and feral deathwielders. People who were born into the crucible of battle and either survived or died. These were then taken and trained and equipped in a very elite manner, with again, bolters and power armor being right then and there from the get-go. Though importantly, the idea of a gene seed or a Primarch or anything like that is completely different, mainly because it's non-existent. The original Space Marines were given biochem treatments to make them bigger, stronger, and faster, and they're also given psychosurgery to make them more applicable to orders. But that's it. All the things that we think of that make a Space Marine, all the uniqueness of 40k, wasn't present as of yet. But why is that? Well, that's because the Space Marines back then were just Space Marines. They weren't the Adeptus Astartes. You see, 40k came out during the 80s, and the sci-fi media of the 80s was heavily impacted by a certain little movie called Aliens. Because right then and there, we got the most iconic example of a Space Marine. The colonial Space Marines of the Aliens universe have made a massive impact in the psyche of media. Ever since then, it's kind of assumed that every single IP that ever exists, if it's set in sci-fi, it needs some type of Space Marine. And in pretty much almost every single setting you can find, there is some version of this pseudo-warrior organization or military culture. And the Space Marines were just 40k's version of that. And that's what 40k was just trying to do. Create their own version of a Space Marine. You see, when 40k was created, GW did not expect it to become this essentially household name that it is today. They just wanted to make something cool from the 80s. That's why there's a lot of weird and wacky stuff that goes on in there that we think is normal. A perfect example is being the OG Noise Marine. Take a look at that guy. Ripped straight from the 80s full of nonsense. But GW didn't realize how good Warhammer 40k would do. They didn't realize how wonderful it would become, and more importantly, how much money they could make from it. Eventually they realized that this is something that they could seriously use. This wasn't just a wacky project made for Sunday morning anymore. This was a full-on business. A brand. Thus, with it being a brand, they had to make it recognizable. And whilst Warhammer 40k, Rogue Trader, which is what we call First Edition, would continue and exist for roughly 6-ish years, eventually GW would find out what they wanted to do with the setting, and we would get the first ever iteration of the grim darkness of the far future with Warhammer 40k, 2nd Edition, widely considered by many to be the best edition of all of Warhammer. But there is a lot of bias going on in that, but hell, for what it is at the time, it's a damn fine thing that it is. And here the Space Marines would be changed again, still keeping a lot of their original aspects but further refining it and adding a bit more of that ancient mysticism that 40k is known for. Taken from Codex Space Marines, Ultramarines, 2nd Edition. The Space Marine is a genetically enhanced warrior, far stronger and tougher than any ordinary human being. Space Marines can live for several hundred years, and they possess extraordinary powers. Every Space Marine is born an ordinary human. The conversion into super warrior is achieved by the careful implantation of genetically cultured organs. Once implanted into the human body, these organs gradually grow and modify the recipient's genetic structure. Selected hormones are boosted to encourage extraordinary growth. Muscle tissues expand, and the bone structure is strengthened. Genetically tailored substances released into the bloodstream cause further change throughout the Space Marine's body. This process can take several years to complete, and only works while the body is naturally growing. This means that Space Marines are recruited at a comparatively young age and must start their training before they reach adulthood. Genetically altered warriors appear in the Emperor's armies even before he had completed the conquest of Earth. They were the first of their kind, and as such their powers were less than that of the Space Marines of latter years. Nonetheless, during those early years, The techniques of genetic reconstruction were perfected. Individual germ cells, called gene seeds, were isolated and genetically modified. From these few cells, tiny organs were cultivated in a nutrient solution. Each organ would then be tested for genetic stability and surgically inserted into a warrior. This technique remains basically the same, even in the 41st millennium. The development of genetic tissue took many centuries of work. This project was itself a spin-off of the aborted Primarch project, which was an early attempt at genetic restructuring, with the aim of creating godlike creatures called Primarchs. The Primarchs were designed to have powers far beyond even the incredible abilities of the Space Marines. Samples of genetic tissue taken from the photo Primarchs were used to create the genetic banks, which provided the first Space Marine gene seed. Thus, the fate of the Primarchs and the Space Marines were inextricably interwoven, even at their conception. And the Primarchs were to play a vital role in the early history of the Space Marines. Now this sounds a lot more like Warhammer 40k. Here we get the idea of Gene Seed. We also get the idea of the Primarchs, and more importantly, the Emperor. Basically, in 2nd edition, the whole idea of the timeline of 40k was created. We get the Age of Strife, the Emperor, as well as the Chaos Gods. With this, the foundation of the Space Marine was created. But it wouldn't end here. Because contrary to what many people believe, the story of Warhammer 40k would change dramatically throughout each and every edition. The Space Marines of 2nd edition would be similar to 3rd, but there will be changes to be made. So on with 4th, 5th, and all the way up to 6th. Indeed, the idea of what we consider to be modern day 40k or Oldhammer actually only really becomes a thing round about 5th to 7th edition, with many people believing that 6th edition is when the idea of 40k truly became solidified. But at that point, it's really just semantics. Yeah, regardless of what you think about it, Space Marines as well as many other factions went through several changes. The Space Marines of 6th edition are very different from the Space Marines of 3rd edition, including each and every different factions. But one thing is completely and utterly true about each and every one of them: they build up upon the other. In 1st edition, you have the idea of genetic tampering. 2nd edition, you then have the idea of Gene Seed. And then the idea of Gene Seed soon begins to mold and change and become solidified into what we know as the many different Gene Seed organs. So too with the Space Marine, the bolter would be changed into the many different types of bolt rifles, as well as the Stalker bolter, Storm bolter, etc., so on and so forth. Same thing with power armors. The Horus Heresy would be expanded. The actions of individual Space Marines change, their own stories change, how they interact with different factions. Everything will be molded, changed, and shaped until we get the modern idea of what is a Space Marine, with the most noticeable introduction being during 8th edition, in which we got the Primaris Marines, which completely flipped the idea of a Space Marine on its head. And no one can truly say what the future holds for Warhammer 40k. Are we going to get another version of that Primaris Marine? Are we going to get different Marines? Are Marines going to be themselves, or is something going to change completely? Because regardless of what you think about the changes, they are going to happen. Because the 40k of today is so very much different from what the original folks made all the way back in the 80s. For better or for worse. But speaking of the modern day Space Marine, what exactly is that like? Taken from Codex Space Marine. The Space Marines are known collectively as the Adeptus Astartes. The Space Marines, known collectively as the Adeptus Astartes, are genetically engineered post-human warriors. They are substantially faster, stronger, more resilient, and more skillful than the unaugmented humans who make up the bulk of their race. Their reactions are swifter, their mental capacity is greater, and they can fight for days without food, water, or sleep, and experience no notable deterioration in their ability to slaughter the Emperor's foes. Physically taller and broader by far than normal human beings, Space Marines possess unique additional organs that allow them to survive underwater, or even for short periods of time in the cold vacuum of space, that give them the ability to spit acid, to rapidly heal, to enter a state of suspended animation, and many other superhuman abilities. Though they have sacrificed their humanity and the chance at a normal life for the privilege, the Space Marines represent the physical and mental pinnacle of mankind, turned solely towards the prosecution of the Imperium's ongoing war for survival. Space Marines are armed and armored with some of the finest war gear that the Imperium can produce. They go to battle clad in power armor, whose ceramite plates are fully enclosed and articulated with servos and fiber bundles that augment the wearer's already prodigious strength. Fed energy from a backpack-borne reactor unit, the suit also incorporates such support systems as hardened vox comms, visual targeting augmentation, a resilient rebreather to filter out contaminants and toxins, and dispensers that can shunt combat stims and pain suppressors into the wearer's bloodstream. Power armor is tough enough to shrug off small arms and even light anti-tank weaponry with ease, as various marks can further be augmented with numerous subsidiary systems to render Space Marines even more strategically versatile and deadly. The weapons of the Adeptus Astartes too are terrifyingly potent. Their iconic armaments fire bolts, self-propelled armor-piercing miniature warheads that detonate deep inside their target to blow them apart. From the compact sidearm known as the bolt pistol to the bolt gun, the bolt rifle, and the brutal heavy bolter, these weapons find broad uses throughout every Space Marine strike force. These are far from the only means of dealing death, however. High-powered firearms ranging from ferocious plasma pistols to heavy weapons no less a man could lift. Roaring chainswords and crackling power fists, energized blades, devastating thunderhammers, and vicious lightning claws. Relic weapons from the dawn of the Imperium, and potent psychic powers wielded by blade-sharp minds, armored personnel carriers, anti-grav battle tanks, unstoppable combat walkers, and waves of interceptor craft and gunships. Even fleets of fearsomely armed spacecraft designed for orbital assault and blockade breaking. All of these and countless other weapons are at the disposal of the Adeptus Astartes, and they use every one of these tools to its absolute maximum potential. So immediately from taking a look at it, you notice that these tend to get a lot more wordy and wordy the newer and newer they get, and part of that is due to us. The 40k community is ravenous for information. We want to know everything there is to know about every goddamn little thing about anything, and thus this show's GW. With that excerpt, you know exactly what a Space Marine is, you know exactly what his power armor is, you know what his weapons is, what a bolter is, what a thunderhammer is. You know everything. You know he has access to many different vehicles, you know how he was created, etc., so on and so forth. You have the exact idea of what a Space Marine is. But that's for the moment. This is what GW has cultivated in the current 10th edition to be the modern day Space Marine, and that may very much change in 11th edition. But so far we've talked a lot about change, about how Space Marines have evolved, molded and grown, how 1st edition, Rogue Trader, 2nd edition and 10th edition are all so supremely different from each other. Yet, there has been one thing that has never changed about a Space Marine. At the end of the day, a Space Marine is an every goddamn broad stretch of means a angry dude in a big suit of armor with a big gun and a big sword. And he is nigh invulnerable. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what a Space Marine is. Big guy, big gun, big armor, big kill. That is an Adeptus Astartes. And ladies and gentlemen, to answer the question, why do people love Space Marines so goddamn much? It's because they are the perfect human fantasy. The reason why Space Marines are so popular, why everyone loves them, is because they're a human being, taken and elevated. They are nigh invulnerable, with powered armor. Armor that essentially makes them into a walking tank. Armed with a bolter, a weapon that is literally based off the shit that tanks use, able to kill almost anything in one hit. A vicious chainsaw sword. Something that is so terribly gruesome and brutal, yet undoubtedly fucking cool. We as human beings identify with humanity. But we know that we have our own frailties, our own shortcomings, our own failings. You take a look at yourself and you who you are is not who you wants to be. Now that's both a good thing and a bad thing. It drives you to improvement, but it can also drive you to self-loathing. It's unique. But we all have that fantasy of what we would be, of who we would be. That's why gaming is so popular. Because at the end of the day, gaming boils down to you doing things that you couldn't do in real life. Whether you're the emperor of a kingdom, the commander of vast armies, an assassin cloaked in shadows, a magic user slaying spells, a Wild West cowboy with a big iron, or a genetically augmented super soldier, clad in the finest weapons and armor, doing battle for the emperor of all mankind. Also, it's the blankness of Space Marines that makes them so lovable. Do you want a Space Marine that is Roman themed? Ultramarines? Do you want a Space Marine based off Secret Knight bullshit? Dark Angels? I heard you like Mongols, the White Scars. You like cybernetic robots? The Iron Hands. Stealthy boys with a bit of a bird thing, the Raven Guard. Do you like yellow walls who are so fucking stubborn it's annoying? The Imperial Fists. I heard you like fantasy. How about Viking werewolves, space wolves, tragic blood vampires, the Blood Angels, and then of course, my goddamn favorite, lovable dragon boys who if you fuck around you will find out what a fucking giant flaming hammer does. That is the Space Marines. Whatever you want, whatever you need, they are your fantasy made manifest. Because at the end of the day, every single Space Marine is just a giant dude in big armor, but flavored differently. Do you want assholes? Marines Malevolent. Do you want guys you can root for? Crimson Fists. Do you want crazy fucking Templars? The Black Templars. Whatever you want, whatever you need, there are Space Marines there for you. Not to mention, Space Marines are indeed the poster boys of make it your own. The original reason why there are just 2 missing legions is for you to create your own. The idea of creating your own personal Space Marine homebrew chapter is something that has been ingrained in Warhammer 40k since its very beginning. Create your own boys, your own paint scheme, paint them, change it, use it, do it. Simple as. That is why people love them. You take yourself and you make yourself in Warhammer 40k exactly how you want it. Yeah, the Imperium may be big, bad, evil bad guys, but do you want your Space Marines to be the good guys? Shit, make them. The Imperium are the bad guys. Do you want to make even worse guys? You can do that too. You can craft and create anything. And whilst that goes for pretty much anything in 40k, with Space Marines, it's the perfect fantasy. Because you can just hand wave away bullshit and be like, they're Space Marines. Yeah, because they are. And people meme about my super special Space Marine OC with 1,000 Terminator suits, but I mean, it's kind of what they were made for. To be the perfect fantasy. And that fantasy stretches to everything about the Space Marine. The idea of an author moment. The Space Marine in the midst of a battle, pointing to some random dude in the field being like, I swear on everything that I stand for, I'm gonna kill you? That's amazing. The idea of a dreadnought. The Space Marine being mortally wounded, having his guts ripped out, but being placed inside a giant robotic sarcophagus, being like, I'm still gonna fight, not even in death does duty end. That's amazing. The different legions, the different styles, the heavies, devastators, tactical marines, assault marines, the chapter, the way they're organized, every single thing about this feeds into this fantasy of this entity, this hyper-technologically advanced superhuman, but who still prays in a chapel surrounded by scriptures, parchment, and candles, like he was stuck in the 1700s. That wondrous, beautiful fantasy is what a Space Marine is. And that is why people love Space Marines. They are the perfect fantasy. They are everything we love about craziness of 40k made in this one unique faction. And the fact that you can take that unique faction and make it your own and still be as crazy and awesome, that is why people love Space Marines. And that's just the lore reasons. Not touching on the tabletop how Space Marines are easy to paint and build, some of them, and you can craft and create them and change them however you want. And whilst many people often don't like Space Marines because they're quote-unquote the poster child, that is indeed the point of it. They're simple, and because they're simple, you can pick them up and love them, and that's why many people do. Space Marines are meant to be the poster boys because anyone can pick them up, and anyone can make that power fantasy into their own fantasy. And if you don't like Space Marines, well, there's so many other wonderful factions of this setting you can choose from. But there's something about a big armored dude that just hits something right where it needs to. But at the end of this video, I want to tell you why I love Space Marines, by sharing with you one of my most favorite moments of Space Marines, taken from Promethean Sun. A heavy engine throb forced its way into the jungle, below where the chaos played out and the reaping of human life went unabated. A few surviving Varians looked up, as if by some unseen hand. The canopy parted to reveal the slab-sided base of a gunship. Its boarding ramp was down, and the darkness within the Stormbird's belly lit up with a host of fire-red lenses. As its occupants concluded their oaths of moment, the first of the warriors hit the ground with a thunderous boom. Chainblade whirring, the giant in forest green leveled his bolt pistol. Rally! For the freedom of humanity! For the glory of terror! Like thunderbolts striking the earth, he was joined by others, armor-clad crusaders bearing the symbol of the snarling drake on their shoulder guard. "We are Fireborn!" they roared as one. "Vulcan!" He had fought the Elder before, though not like this. Attached to 154th Expeditionary Fleet, he had been charged with fighting off piratical raiders. An entirely different alien breed to the jungle dwellers. They had been succubus horrors, draped in leather and festooned with charnel blades, emerging from space as if an autonomous part of the void had detached itself from the whole. The raiders had gutted 2 frigates before the 18th Legion intervened and repelled them. Nocturnians called them Dusk Wraiths. They were phantoms, soul thieves, and he hated them with all the ingrained cultural memory of his people. Hekaton had not crossed blades with the Dragon Riders before this battle. These force-bound aliens were not as technologically advanced as their cousins, but they were still Eldar, and they were fast. "Cutting left," the warning vocalized through his squad's comm feed and displayed as an icon in his retinal lenses. His bolt pistol was still scanning, spitting out semi-auto at an enemy so fleet of foot his targeter couldn't keep up. Foliage split apart under the barrage. "Burst fire!" The legionaries stopped aiming and focused on areas instead. A furious combo salvo brought down the rider and 3 of its kindred. Hekaton saw Brother Kantar kneel and dab a finger of ash down his shoulder guard from the smoldering remains of one of the fires littering the clearing. "Onto the anvil, Captain!" Hekaton smiled behind his faceplate and gave Kaitar a curt salute. He opened up the company band feed. "All of the 14th, advance!" Multiple stormbirds had broken through the forest canopy, bringing the warriors of the 18th Legion to relieve the beleaguered army. They consolidated quickly and methodically, Vulcan's sons as exacting as their father when it came to war-making. Several squads from Hekaton's company came together, and a wall of bolt of fire lit up the jungle, chasing back the darkness and chewing up trees into kindling. The Eldar vanguard withered before it. Petrosaurs took flight, spearing through gaps in a leaf canopy, calling out vengeance. A blockade of stegosaurs emerged from behind a fleeing screen of raptor riders in an attempt to impede the legionaries. With clipped battle sign, Hekaton brought up a division of heavies. Capacitors powered up from a soft drone to a hard thrum as conversion beamers reached fire-ready status. A crackling boom rushed from their aiming nozzles as the energy weapons sliced foliage apart to detonate with purpose against the stegosaurs. An explosion engulfed the beasts, leaving nothing behind but wet bone chunks. Against the legionaries, the hit-and-run tactics of the Eldar were blunted. As they advanced, the jungle ahead of the salamanders began to change. Branches intertwined together, leaves and vines thickened to form a union. Within minutes, an arboreal impasse had grown in front of the legionaries. Through the retinal lenses of his battle helm, Hekaton could still detect multiple body traces from the enemy where they had waited in the gloom. The faster-moving elements of the Eldar force were already circling again. Raptor packs bounded across his peripheral vision in a colorful heat blur, while Petrosaur kindreds found perches in the highest trees, from where they could launch an ambush. The icon of 5th Sergeant Bannon flashed up alongside targeting data on Hekaton's left retinal lens as the captain opened up a channel. "Hell and flame, brother!" An affirmation symbol flashed once, before the entire Salamander's front line withdrew and fell back to suppressing fire protocols. Sergeant Bannon brought 6 flame squads to the front of the line. "Hell and flame!" His cry was answered by a pulsating wave of superheated promethium. The jungle shivered in conflagration. On the flanks, incendiaries went up where the circling raptors made contact with the chains of frag grenades laid by Salamander scouts, operating unseen at the fringes of the battle zone. Dropships filled the sky now, the flames savaging the jungle reflected on the metallic underbellies. Blackened tree stumps and crisp plant life broke apart in the downdrafts from the Stormbird's descent thrusters. Ash laced the breeze. Everything burned. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know down below, why do you guys love Space Marines? What are some of your favorite moments? I'd love to hear them down below. I would say a massive thank you guys for watching, but even more massive thank you to my awesome members and patrons. Shout out to my awesome Lieutenant Tier members, Mr. Eddie V3, Miss Withdrawal of the Void, and Miss Tori. Shout out to my awesome Sergeant Tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Warsmith.Fireheart, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Bowen, Mr. Sean IRL7, Mr. Matthew Merrill, Mr. Sergeant Cossack, 68W173D, and Mr. That Guy. Shout out to my Cripple Gym members, Mr. Tremayo the Math Kitty, Lord Rosarius, Mr. Tech Priest Toaster, Mr. Bowen, Shauna Smithers, The Gentle Salamander, The Wench of Warhammer, Major Doshinet, Mr. Edward King, and Mr. Overanalyze This. And finally, but certainly not least, shout out to my private tier members, Mr. Thomas Moslons, Mr. Ivan_SBW, Mr. Monkey Man, Mr. Michael Hayeda, Mr. Diego Castro, Mr. Fortis Unum, Mr. CMD Nay, Mr. Eric Mossero, Mr. Dom Marek, Mr. Ken_Sakura333, Mr. Adrian Von Furen, Mr. Morley Bankrupt, Mr. Matthew Peter, Josh Lee 1320, Mr. Adrax1, Mr. Ethan Elam U71, Mr. Kiri Khan. Thank you. I love each and every one of you. Sign up with memberships to get a bunch of awesome benefits, early access videos, behind the scenes stuff, special only content, member only exclusive Discord, and all my love and support. But remember, there's always be free. And whether you give your boy $1 or not, I will love you just the same. Mwah! But ladies and gentlemen, I've been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, amazing people. Thank you all so very much for watching. I do love each and every one of you. Y'all make sure to say hello there, boys and gals. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers.